Greetings everyone, this is Jed Shlackman, and for this video I'll be speaking about a topic in the area of psychology, and this concerns trauma and fear and our reactions to things that we feel are threats or problems in life. I want to present this in the context of a phrase that's been popularized in recent years, and that's the phrase problem, reaction, solution, which people have discussed in terms of deliberate use of psychology to manipulate people. So someone creates some type of plan or solution per se that they want to implement, and a particular problem is pointed to or even intentionally created to invoke a public reaction that leads people toward the particular plan or proposal that was set up to be implemented. So that's kind of the idea of engineering consensus or manipulating society to go in a particular direction using our propensity to kind of react without thinking, to be caught up in the emotions and seeking safety or security as our response, not taking a lot of time to really think through the situation, to clearly analyze the problem or threat, to have a really accurate understanding of it, and then to look in depth at the different alternative options or possibilities for addressing the problem that we've identified. Often we just react by choosing whatever is put in front of us as a potential solution or resolution. Whatever we think at that time is likely to bring us some form of relief or safety or security. And this is really just human nature. It's not something that only happens when someone's exploiting that or trying to manipulate people. It's how we go about our lives in general. We tend to be somewhat impulsive. We tend to look for relief. We tend to seek safety and security whenever there's some type of stress or threat that's present. And when you're in that state, it's really natural to be impulsive, to not take a lot of time to think things through. But as a consequence of that, we're often choosing or acting in a way that leads us toward what you could call a false solution, something that we think in that moment is going to solve the issue or improve our situation. But if we look more in depth at the long term, if we kind of step by step follow things to their logical outcome based on a complete understanding of the variables involved, we might see that we're going towards something that's actually the opposite of what we're intending. So rather than solving the problem, perhaps you might end up aggravating or expanding the problem, or just shifting the problem or creating a different problem in place of the original one. So it's helpful to realize this and to kind of build skills to slow down, to be able to pause, to use our rational mind a little more, to use logic to look at the potential outcomes of whatever we're doing, to not just look at the short term or not just be short-sighted, but actually to look at the long haul of things, to see where things might ultimately lead, if we take a step in a particular way or a particular direction, if we engage in a particular alternative or particular activity. You can look at many examples in your own life, times where you were feeling somehow stressed or threatened. You saw a situation as a problem and you kind of rushed or acted impulsively to try to handle that or address it. And then if you look back and reflect, you might see how what you did at that time wasn't really so wise, even though at the moment it might have seemed like it was a good way to address the situation. For the long term, you see that it actually created additional problems, or it didn't really address the original problem in the way that you thought it would. We could use the example, let's say, of a child, a child who has something happen at school that child is ashamed of, that they feel their parents are going to get upset with them about it. It could be that they had a poor grade on a test, or they got into some type of altercation with a peer and they received some type of discipline at school, and so they're not wanting their parent to know about it. They're afraid to tell the parent, so they're anticipating that negative response from the parent. They might think their mother or father is going to yell at them, to give them some type of restriction or discipline at home because of what happened at school. So the child, wanting to not experience that negative response, wanting to avoid that, in their mind thinking they can escape that and just kind of keep the peace and not have to deal with it, the child may choose to keep this a secret or lie, to tell their parents, oh, my day was fine, everything was okay today. And then eventually the parent hears from the teacher or hears from the school and finds out what actually happened. And so now the parent is going to be not only upset about whatever occurred at school, whatever that issue was there, but now they're also seeing that their child was deceitful, the child lied to them. So now there's an even worse outcome, in a sense, for that child. That child is now going to have to face their parent seeing the school issue, and then on top of that, the lying issue. So in that case, the child reacted impulsively in a way where they thought that they were going to escape a negative outcome, and instead they've just kind of expanded the negative outcome. There are many situations in life where we really don't think through what the outcomes might be for our choices or actions. Someone might be feeling some type of pain or suffering, and they might choose to take some type of drug in the moment to get relief from that. And it could end up being that that drug creates an additional problem. It might cause some other side effect, or it might lead to an addiction. So there are different potential long-term outcomes that you might not really think of at that moment when you're seeking to feel better, to avoid the negative circumstance that you're in at that moment. So looking at this on a greater societal scale, we can see situations where the public might feel threatened or concerned about something that is identified as the problem at that moment, and someone might present to them a particular solution based on how the problem is perceived, which may or may not be accurate, and it may or may not be really an ideal or optimal solution. You might have a situation where there's the threat of some foreign enemy attacking or invading a country, and the leaders of the country are suggesting a particular course of action. You might have a situation where there's an economic crisis, and the government says, well, to address this crisis, we're going to do something economically, such as infusing more currency into the system, giving out loans. Different options might be available, and it might be something that appears to be a good boost for the economy in the short term, but it could actually disturb things for the long term and lead to some other economic problem or crisis later. You can use the example in your own lives maybe of taking out a loan for something because you're under financial stress. So to deal with that immediate situation, you create a debt, and then later on that debt might come due, and you might not have been able to recover financially in the meantime. So now your financial stresses have actually increased rather than decreased by choosing to take that loan earlier on. These are just some simple examples of how our short-term actions could lead to the opposite of what we're intending, since we're not really thinking through what the long-term possible outcomes might be. So this could be economic issues, it could be social issues, health issues, environmental issues. So there are many situations where something is recommended to solve a problem, but that solution is kind of a false solution. It might theoretically sound good, it might even temporarily appear to create some form of improvement, but it actually leads to something that's negative, perhaps something even worse than the original problem that you were trying to address. I'll use the example of people's concerns about climate and the planet becoming warmer or hotter. So someone might have the idea that to prevent the planet from heating up, they're going to block sunlight. So less sunlight will be able to reach the planet, and then based on their understanding of things, that would prevent the planet from getting hotter. So they could be choosing to put something up in the atmosphere that would reflect or block sunlight in some way. But it might end up turning out that by doing that, they end up actually disrupting natural climate regulatory mechanisms that the planet itself has, and it could actually worsen the problem. Or by blocking the sunlight, they're actually creating some other significant problems that have a harmful impact on life on the planet. So they might have thought that they were solving or preventing a problem, but their action, based on their lack of awareness of what it could lead to, actually creates other problems. This is why taking time to carefully examine the problem itself, to have a full understanding of it, and also carefully kind of thinking through all the potential outcomes, short-term and long-term, of any solution that you're trying to implement is vital if you want to really improve your chances of making a wise choice and truly solving or resolving whatever problem you see yourself facing. So in our lives we encounter a variety of stresses, of threats, of challenges, things that we could label as a problem. And we want to be able to practice mindfulness of some sort to kind of settle ourselves down, to not be too impulsive, to not be in too much of a rush to react, to do something. There are of course situations where we don't have time, where something actually does need to be done immediately to address an immediate threat that we're under. So in those cases, you kind of have to take that risk in a way, to choose something to do to deal with that, even though you don't have time to carefully analyze it. But many other instances in life are situations where we do really have more time to pause, to think through our choices, and to really more carefully look at different options, look at the long-term fallout, you could say, of those actions, whatever might occur over time or as a consequence of what you're choosing to do. I appreciate you for taking your time to view this video, to explore these topics in terms of psychology, spirituality, holistic health, other subjects that I share about in my videos. And for those that are interested in holistic healing modalities and services, I invite you to visit my website. The address is phinsights.com. That's phinsights.com. For now, I wish each of you a wonderful day. Namaste.